Dózsa, an unusual death. What was the most unique and unusual death of all time? György Dózsa, or György Székely, Romanian, Gheorghe Doja, 1470, July 20, 1514, was a Székely man of arms, and by some counts, a nobleman, from Transylvania, Kingdom of Hungary, who led a peasant revolt against the landed nobility of the kingdom. Eventually he was captured, tortured and executed along with his followers, and remembered as both a Christian martyr and a dangerous criminal. During the reign of King Vladislas II of Hungary, 1490-1516, royal power declined in favor of the magnates, who used their power to limit the freedom of the peasants. In the end, Dózsa was captured after losing a battle. His enemies of him executed him in the most disturbing way he has read in a long time. He was condemned to sit on a burning, smoking iron throne, and forced to wear a red, hot iron crown and scepter. While he was suffering, a group of 9 rebel comrades who had been captured and had not eaten for days were led to the throne. Oral rumors of the battle emerged in the geographic centers of the revolt, the counties of Abaj and Zemplin, the border region of Bex and the provinces of Bihar, the area around the city of Sanad, the provinces of Bodrog and Bax. The parties disputed who had been the aggressor, who had had to defend themselves, and which side had been more ruthless. On both sides, the dramatization of events culminated in a conspiracy theory, after recruiting many crusaders against the enemies of the Christian faith, and when they were ready to launch this honorable expedition, suddenly at the instigation of the enemy of mankind, the nobles attacked the crusaders. When the crusaders realized the betrayal of the nobility, they bravely began to defend themselves to save their lives. This quote is taken from one of the rebel stories of Nicholas of Bihar, the choir, priest of the parish church in the market town of Bihar. In this story, written in 1523, the conflict is no longer attributed to the discord between the crusaders and the nobility, but rather to the betrayal of the latter. A very different conspiracy theory is elaborated in the counter-narrative of a noble participant, Dionysius Kaskak, in 1525. The powerful, for their part, explained their bloody punishment simply by referring to the defense of the homeland and the right to wage war. Our noble cleric was more talkative. It was possible for him to talk about his own extreme violence. Kapandi's volubility is understandable when seen in his contemporary context. In the late medieval culture of honor and in the ritual processes of negotiating conflicts involving rights of both violence and law, there was much room for extreme violence, but considered legitimate. The staging of their torture had a moral, spiritual and aesthetic value in a communicative space distinct from the war of memory. Additionally, reports like these sought to satisfy the growing demand from an international audience craving news and entertainment. A series of pamphlets published in German cities, as events unfolded during 1514, ended with an image of the peasant king crowned with a red, hot iron crown, being roasted on his throne and eaten by his companions as they listened to a Te Deum Laudamus. The author promised a second issue to update readers on the continuing struggle on the battlefield, but this never appeared, because we can assume that the reader's appetite for horror was already well satisfied. Regarding the Hungarian battle of words, we have seen how the participants on both sides, both the rebels and the powerful, have fabricated various conspiracy theories, transforming very different individual motives and chaotic happenings into a linear sequence and logic of events. Kapandi painted his violence of him as an act of law enforcement by claiming that he took part in a defensive war under royal orders and that he captured and punished the rebels in accordance with what was common war practice. Similarly, in subsequent petitions to the Pope, those who fought a just war against the infidel Turks promptly and extensively recounted their savage deeds. Sexual torture, mutilation and dehumanization of the enemy served to exert power over the rebel body and, in this way, to symbolically restore social order. Rather than being brutal, Kapandi was right. Furthermore, his story is a textual representation of the late medieval horror theater where public execution and the cruelties of war were the regulated and accepted places to represent the body in pain. Let's take a look at the naturalistic representation of the execution of the peasant king Dózsa in the humanist epos. The sap came out abundantly from his broken skull, his brain boiled from his ears, mouth and nose. In 1514, a pamphlet entitled The Crusade of the Hungarians and the Extreme Cruelty Committed by Both Sides appeared in Rome. In its pages, the pious peasants who considered themselves followers of the cross are transformed into pagan savages after having collectively raped the noble women. But the culmination of the story is the brutal but deserved death of the peasant leaders. The leaders were immediately taken and their naked bodies tied with irons to long poles and burned alive in the fire. Some of them put on the cross, others skinned and left alive for a few days, others were quartered and fed to the dogs. The ruling elite, who had learned to fear the peasants in 1514, organized the staging of the dramatic commemoration of the uprising and then of its stigmatization in the following centuries. Public executions were designed to deter crime and legitimize power by reminding people of the aftermath of the rebellion and making them shy away from any attempt. We don't know how ordinary people responded. If early modern viewers remembered, identified with, and experienced pain when it was shown on stage, as several scholars have suggested, they may have felt that this suffering contributed to their purification and salvation. In terms of current psychological concepts, the repeated remembrance and staging of such painful events would have hindered mental healing, and we would expect the pre-modern practice of public execution as a memorial ritual to worsen any collective trauma. But if nations can, freely, repress, and forget, with psychological impunity, as Iwona Zureka recently argued, we may have to conclude that the image of modern society in Hungary was in fact stabilized by cultivation in the text, in the image and ritual of the martyr Daca and his crown of thorns.